On today's episode of the Wild Party Podcast, we welcome Lynn Power, co-founder and CEO of MASAMI, a clean vegan hair care brand powered by Japanese ocean botanicals. After spending 30 years at the top of the advertising world, Lynn made a bold pivot to entrepreneurship, launching MASAMI just before the pandemic hit. In this episode, we talk about building a brand rooted in sustainability, what it's really like to bootstrap a beauty business, and how Lynn's personal battle with cancer reshaped her views on toxic ingredients and self-care. We also dive into the power of community, her work with the Conscious Beauty Collective, and why a life filled with hydration is everything. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stephanie Lahart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. And today, I'm very excited to welcome to the show Lynn Power, the founder of MASAMI Haircare, which is a clean, premium vegan hair care system that uses special Japanese ocean botanicals for hydration. She's also the founder of the Conscious Beauty Collective, which is a group of 60 plus clean indie beauty and wellness brands. And I can't wait to hear all about them because I think I just heard a little sneak peek of a meeting before we got on here. And I'm also really excited to be learning more about the importance of clean beauty and why sustainability is more than packaging. And Lynn, I just told you briefly, I said, look, you really are my sister from another mister. We have so much in common. I am also a middle child. I'm just going to
Ooh,
start there. Welcome to the show,
okay.
Lynn.
Thank you. I love it. I love everything. Great intro. Okay, middle child. Do you have brothers, sisters? What's
I have two sisters.
two sisters? I have two brothers.
Oh,
So
I
it's a
often
good,
introduce myself. I say, I'll let you know right now, I'm the middle child of three sisters. I talk very fast.
I sometimes say I'm a very good peacemaker because you have to be when you're in the middle.
Absolutely.
Did-
We are the natural negotiators.
And did you know that there are more US presidents that were middle children than oldest or youngest?
I did not know that. Wow.
Anyway, little fun fact for you.
Yeah, we want to make sure everybody gets along. And we want there to be peace in the world too, which brings us to the fact that you have founded this beautiful brand. Am I saying it right? Is it Masami?
It's Masami because we named it after my co-founder's husband, Masahiro, who is this lovely little Japanese man. And he found us our main ingredient.
Okay, we're going to get to that secret sauce because I know that there's quite a lot that went into discovering that and using it. Okay, going back to a little bit about our similarity. So, I did read that you spent about 30 years in the advertising business, doing all kinds of jobs, but really being like the executive for most of it. I've spent my entire career in advertising. So, we're middle children. We've been in advertising our whole lives. Now we're both focused on sustainability. Let's talk about how you got here, Lynn. What was the deciding factor that made you say, you know what, 30 years in corporate America is enough for me? I'm going to launch my own brand because that seems so much easier.
I know, who knew, right? But you will understand this having been kind of in that world. People have this idea that being the boss is really glamorous, that you're going around the world doing, celebrity shoots. I can assure you that is not what happens. You end up dealing with all the crap. You're putting out fires every day, and I don't mind that, but basically I had gotten so far removed from what I love, which is building brands. I didn't want to sit in finance meetings every day and deal with lawsuits and legal and HR issues. And that's just wasn't getting me very excited. So I decided, well, there's really nothing more for me to do in this industry because I've kind of, I mean, I could go backwards and just, run an account, but that felt a little, well, I've done that.
Yeah.
And so what's the logical next step? Well, let's take all this advice that I've been giving my clients for all these years and let's actually see if it's any good because I'm gonna do it on myself and start my own business and essentially what's the phrase, eat your own dog food, something like
Yeah.
that?
And you were working for really big agencies. I mean, you were at BBDO, Ogilvy and Mather,
Yeah.
Gray, J. Walter Thompson. Anybody that's in advertising is like, oh my God, these are huge careers. And you're right. We sit there from a place, you're starting your career, you look at these big names, you're like, yes, that's where I want my career to be. We all think it's Mad Men. It is nothing like that. I want to be an executive. And then in the end, we realize our jobs are just paper pushers.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like how unsatisfying. I mean, I fell into the business. I don't know about you. I had gone to school for criminal justice English, thinking I was going to go in the FBI or something in that vein. And then it was recession back in 1989, it's a long time ago. And then I ended up just falling into advertising and loving it. But I loved using creativity as a business tool, like problem solving, but with marketing. And to your point, you're paper pushing. You're not problem solving. You're problem solving like like I said, like a lawsuit kind of thing, but you're not problem solving like business challenges. And so it felt a lot more administrative and operational than I wanted. And so that's why I'm like, you know what? I've done everything I want to do. Time to leave, time to do something else. And then I'm somebody that has a hard time saying no if I think there's a good idea. So I ended up launching MASAMI with my co-founder. And then I ended up launching another business, a candle brand. And then I had to put the candle brand to the side because I got cancer. So there was that. But then I ended up launching the Conscious Beauty Collective. Like I just have to stop.
No, it's the creativity. That's why I love it so much because it's so, again, I related to it, in so many ways. My degree actually was in journalism. I fell into advertising and digital marketing
Interesting.
because, the internet like just exploded when I
Yeah.
was like coming up in my career. So I totally get that. And yes, I had gotten, I thought was my dream job at one point, an executive making over six figures. And I was like, I hate this job more than anything. So I quit that whole world, launched my own marketing business, and then launched the podcast. And I'm like way happier now. So
Oh my God. Yeah. I love it. That's a great testimony to anyone who's sort of waiting. Like
yeah.
people are always sort of like, I want to do this, but I'm like, what are you waiting for? Like, why are you standing on the sidelines? And people have this impression that you have to have all this, your ducks in a row and everything has to be figured out. And it's like, yes, to a degree, but not as much as you think. You know what I mean? You can still get going and kind of do what you want to do without having to have everything completely like perfect.
That is true. And so when you were starting this brand now, Masami, that's how you say it, right? Masami.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, it was actually during a time like it was right as the pandemic was hitting, right? Or right before?
It was right before, and I got to tell you, thinking back, it's so surreal because we launched at New York Fashion Week in February, and we had two fashion shows, and we were sitting in these like super crowded New York City showrooms where it's like you're literally like this, like jammed up with people. And then like 3 weeks later, it's like lockdown. So it just was like, wait, we were just there. How can it be, So it was very surreal. But everyone was going through it. So you know what I mean? It didn't feel like, I mean, it was not great being a brand new brand, but at the same time, in a way it was good because we weren't having to unwind a retail store or other things like that, and we could just focus on our direct to consumer business and our customers and our content and all the digital side of things, which you need to have anyway. That's like that's sort of the cornerstone of our business anyway, so it all works out.
Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned all that. Let's talk about the actual business and the actual
Yeah.
product now. Take us back to the beginning because there's so much in there. There's like proprietary blends, there's Japanese botanicals. It all sounds very delicious. I love anything that is vegan and cruelty free. So talk about like, so you were in the advertising industry, you're an executive. Were you already Did you already have it in your mind that you wanted to start your own business? Had you already made those movements towards it, or did you quit and then decide I need to do something else with my life? So how did that all come together?
It was a little bit in between because I knew I didn't want to do the corporate thing anymore and I was not enjoying my life day to day. And I also felt somewhat tied to my sort of desk or office. And I wanted to just be more flexible and travel and whatnot. So when I quit in 2018, I actually started doing some consulting with startups because that was like in my head, that was the fastest way to get back to what I explained earlier, like making an impact on a business. Because when you're working with a startup, you literally will have a conversation. I could literally be like, Stephanie, what if you took the wild party and you incorporated some, iconography that telegraphs, more of the personality and we have this conversation and the next morning I'll go on your website and it's like you've already changed it all because you're a startup, you can do it. You can work in real time. And that to me was super appealing because I had been working with J&J, Nestle, Kimberly Clark, Campari. I mean, these companies that slow.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like they just, you will have an idea for them and it will take them 18 months to get. And by the time you're ready to launch it, it's like, it's already old. It's like that, we're past that. So that's the challenge, I think, with these big companies and getting out of their own way and being able to move more in speed of culture. Very difficult for them. And I just was feeling it and feeling frustrated. So I started working with startups to get back to that, like just kind of get my muscle memory back. And I was really enjoying it. And then I met my co-founder, James, who had been working on our hair care formulas for about 10 years. Now, my husband introduced me to James, and I was thinking, and my husband's done this before, where he's introduced me to people, and I'm like, they end up not being particularly great, and I end up firing them. But that's another podcast. But so when he told me, oh, there's this guy who is creating this hair form, and I've worked on a lot of beauty in my career. So Bill was sort of like, can you just give him some advice? And James and Masa came over to my apartment for dinner because I'm multitasking and I'm like, well, I gotta feed the kids anyway. Let's just do it all together. And my dogs immediately loved them. That was a good sign because my dogs don't love everyone. And you have dogs too, I know. I have a little Chiweenie and he's very particular and he's pain in the butt. And at the time I had a big husky shepherd we got him when he was about 5 and he'd been abused. So he's very skittish, but both of them immediately glommed on to James and Masa. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then of course, over the dinner, we ended up talking all about the formulation and what he'd been doing and working on. And I was intrigued. And then I tried the product and I really loved the product. And so we ended up deciding to launch the business together, which then took about 18 months from that point. So for anyone thinking, oh, this is not that hard to do, he had gotten the formulas 80% there, and we still had a year and a half because I wanted to clean them up a little bit more. I wanted to do a lot of consumer testing on every hair type and texture. Like there's things that you want to do to make sure, is this actually commercially viable? And then, of course, you have to get your go-to-market strategy set up, your e-coms site, all you know, the wiring for the business has to be in place and actually has to work. And then of course the brand name, the packaging, all that stuff. And so that's kind of what happened. And it took us, about 18 months to get it all done. We named the brand MASAMI after Masahiro, which is James's husband. And Masahiro grew up in Atsuchi, Japan, which is in the northeast corner of Japan. And he grew up in a home where his mother was owned a salon. She was a stylist. And so he was always growing up around beauty products, and he saw that she would use this ingredient kind of as a DIY thing to put it in skincare and hair care. And that is how we figured out this could be a really good ingredient. And then obviously years of testing and trying and figuring out how to add it to the formula so it can be effective, and lots of other things involved with that. But that's basically how that started.
Okay, so Masami then is a hair care line. So there's shampoo, conditioner, a serum, but it all includes that ingredient you talked about. So what is the name of that is what? Makabu?
Yes, it's called makabu and it's part of wakame seaweed. So if you've ever had like miso soup and you know that there's little seaweed, that's the same family of seaweed. But the makabu is like a nutrients dense root of the seaweed. It almost looks like this weird spiral shaped, weird, crazy thing. Um, Very slimy,
Mhm.
very gooey. But it's really, really nutrient dense. And so, yeah, we work with a family-owned seaweed company in Japan who harvests it ethically with local fishermen, and then they powder it down and send it to us, and we make it here in the US.
Yeah, and they've actually used this ingredient in Japan for like centuries, right? For various
Oh,
health-giving
yes.
properties. So it's something very well over known over there, but something we didn't really know about. But what was it specifically that just really attracted you to it that you're like, this is kind of like the miracle ingredient that will change everything? Because there's I so my hair is wavy, but I do have an issue that whenever I use a product that says hydration, it's always super heavy on my hair, and I can't
Yep.
use it. So I was interested when I saw this, the weightless formula of it. How did all that come together? How did you guys figure that out?
So the key was we wanted to solve the number one hair issue, which is hydration, but my hair has a similar problem to your hair, although you can't tell now because it's short. But normally pre-Masami and pre-chemo, my hair was longer and I would use same thing, a hydrating product, and my hair would almost look greasy.
Hmm.
It would look flat, it would look greasy, it just wouldn't look good. And so I was one of those people, I would stand in front of the hair care aisle and go, I want hydration, I want healthy hair, I want shine, I want volume. Yes, my hair is color treated. I don't know which one to get because you have to choose. And so when we were making our formula, it was like, we want to solve all those things. We don't want people to have to choose. But the unlock with the ingredient to your question was we realized that Makabu acts like a sponge
Mm.
and it basically brings hydration to your hair botanically, naturally. And so what we do is we add it into our formulas in powder form, which allows us to put more active ingredient in the formulas. Otherwise, a lot of hair care or skincare brands use extracts, and extracts are heavy. They're just like very dense oils. And so this way we can get the hydration benefits, but without that heaviness, without the weight. So you actually get volume. I mean, all I did is this is my usual routine. Shampoo, conditioner, I throw a little styling cream in and I'm good. And it stays. Like I don't have any. So, it's not flat. In other words, it's like, because my hair used to, it would be like, it would look like the, like before,
Yeah.
if I was using a different product, it would literally just look like it would be flat.
Yeah, and that
Um,
was one of the things that I read all through your website and just on your social media. People kept saying, God, it's so weightless. It feels so good. And they were also super impressed that they didn't have to use a lot of the product, which I really like too. Because, when people say to me, oh, you got to make sure you use enough of the product, you got to use more of it. And I'm thinking, this is not going to work on my hair. Because, like, I have the same problem. Everything makes my hair flat and greasy looking then. So, along comes, your product. It's non-toxic, it's color safe, it's vegan, it's cruelty free, climate positive. You're checking all my boxes. Oh, and made in the USA for the most
yep.
part, right? Um,
Yeah.
So I was like, ooh, I really want to talk to this woman. Okay, so tell me a little bit more about, because I feel like I'm now an infomercial for your product. I want to hear a little bit more about your entrepreneur journey, what it really looked like to put this business together. Are you guys self-funded? Like, how did this all come? How did this all happen?
Yeah, we're totally self-funded. And this is another piece of advice for anyone listening who's thinking of launching a business. Whatever your budget is, and you have to be really like, itemize everything you think you're going to need and spend, just double it because there are so many things that happen along the way that you don't plan on where you're like, wait a minute, California wants $800 for a franchise tax? Like things that you just don't budget. And so you have to really, that's one of the biggest killers for small businesses is cash flow. So you really have to think ahead and just try to plan for that. And anyway, so sorry, what was your question now? I forgot.
My question was, when you're starting a business, the first question always is, well, where did the money come from? Because
Oh,
if
where
you're
did the money come from?
bootstrapping, people who bootstrap, it's usually a longer process because maybe the funds are
Yeah.
smaller, right? Whereas if you get funding, but that's a different model. So, I'm always looking for, well, how did you even start? Like, how were you able to even start testing products or doing prototypes and then getting people to try them? Because it's, one thing to say, I have a product idea. It's another thing to create the product and then get people to use it and then produce it in mass to actually potentially make a profit?
Oh, 100%. So we are self-funded. So we used our own money to get the business up and running. And now we're 5 years in-ish. And we are now just finally getting to the point where I'm not putting our money in anymore. So it takes that long when you're bootstrapped essentially, because to your point, you're just steady Eddie and you're growing, but it's at a very slow pace. And we don't have the funds to give us a huge infusion of like, we're going to hire this celebrity or we're going to whatever. And so you just have to also be prepared for what that means from a stamina perspective, because it's every day. You're day in, day out. It never really ends. You're constantly, plugging away. And that's what it takes to keep the business growing. Now, there are beauty brands that have investors, obviously, but the beauty category is so crowded, it's not an easy category to get investors. And the investors tend to want somebody who's either already shown that they can successfully scale a business and exit a business. So you already have to have a success under your belt, or they tend to want people that have an idea that's just insanely unique, like something nobody's thought of, or a founder who's just very telegraphic, a 25-year-old, beautiful face of a brand. So if you don't fit one of those buckets, especially if you're an older founder, which I am, very difficult to get funding. So there
Yeah, I
was a,
can imagine so. But even with your experience in the advertising world, you at least had that knowledge of what it takes to put a brand together. So you were
yeah,
already starting a little bit ahead of the game, which is great because you're exactly right. They're looking for a certain bucket to be filled, whether it's a certain product or a certain look or a certain founder. And there's a lot of competition in that. So, the fact that you have come to it, maybe, from the executive level, I think has been very interesting for you. So, what do you think has been maybe one of the major challenges that you have had to come over personally or as a company, through this development process?
I mean, one of my biggest challenges was when I got cancer, and it was a year after I launched because my business was a baby, and I feel like I had just given birth to this little business, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I'm bald. Yeah, so that was a thing. But what that did for me, it forced me to reevaluate like my priorities, and that's a good thing. And I'm not somebody who likes to have a lot of downtime in my own head. I like to be productive. I like to do things. I like to make things. And I was sort of forced to reflect and think about lots of things, the business, the legacy, my priorities. So it led me to a few things, which is, first of all, if it's your own business, you can throw out the playbook and the rule book.
Mhm.
Like, I don't have to live in New York anymore. I don't. I moved to Palm Springs. Like, you can live wherever you want for the most part, unless there's a reason that you have to be close to, a warehouse or operations or something. And so we actually have been traveling a lot more. I just was in Japan and Bali last month. We're headed to Italy next month. Like, because again, when you're an entrepreneur, you know, people don't know if I'm responding to them, from California or from Italy, like as long as things are happening. And so I do think being able to kind of take a little control of your life is one of the most appealing things of entrepreneurship. And I highly recommend that.
Yeah, and again, like you said earlier, you're like people think, oh, you're the boss, and then you can do whatever you want. And in some ways, that is true. Like I can get up from my desk anytime I want and do whatever. And I do. I will guard it in the middle of the day, and I love that. So definitely the trade-off is there. But you also, I find I work harder because I'm working for
Yeah.
myself, and then I'm trying to fit all, everything in to all this other time. So again, because we are so similar, you're launching a business, you're dealing with cancer, and you're like, this is not enough. I must also start a conscious beauty collective.
I'm crazy. I think so yes. Anyone listening, do not do what I'm doing. It's like I'm literally like crazy, crazy. But so what had happened was as I was reflecting on my priorities, I realized that the brand partnerships that I did during COVID were really good for the business, like organic growth, customer acquisition, social media following, all that stuff. And so I wanted to think, I was thinking about how do I do more of those so we're not just doing two or three at a time. And that led to this idea, well, why don't we actually create a collective? Let's do pop-up stores, because at the time, this was 2022, retail is opening up again and there was a lot of empty space. Not the case today, but back then there was. And so we were able to go in and do pop-ups. We took over an old Aveda in Stonestown Galleria, which is in San Francisco. That was our first one. We were there 3 months, and then we went to Boston, and then we went to Southern California. And now what we do, we have 65, more than 65 brands that are part of the collective. And we do what I call pop-ins, which is we take a curated shelf of 10 to 12 clean beauty products and we pop it into an existing retailer, a med spa, a salon, a boutique, a clean beauty store. And we have 14 across the US right now.
That's so great because then you give all these other brands a chance, a chance to, expand what they're doing as well without having to figure out everything from ground one. So I love that you're lifting up other businesses. Again, when I started this podcast, my intention was just simply to, be able to highlight all these amazing businesses that I was seeing out there and to be like, hey, yeah, I'm interested in vegan and cruelty-free and sustainability, and I want these businesses to succeed. And now that I've met so many of them, now, like you, I'm putting together my own like directory, aka collective, because now I've met so many, I'm like, well, I got to make sure everybody knows about them. But I love that you're changing the model too, as far as like the pop in. That's the first time I've ever heard that term, by the way.
Well, that's my marketing brain. So, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. And you're right. It's about the group. It's a collective. It's about all of us helping each other because that was one of my, it's not, I was going to say epiphany, but it's really not that like revolutionary, which is just, you can get so much further if you just collaborate. And yes, we're all beauty brands, and there are other hair care brands that have shampoos there, but not everybody wants my product, and there's plenty of hair and there's plenty of skin. And so if you think of it that way, it's like the world is about abundance. I think it changes your mindset and how you tackle these things. And so that's why we can have 65 brands that are competitive, but yet everybody's there to help each other and support each other. And it's been really lovely. And I love working with the other founders. So it's just been a great journey.
Yeah, being the facilitator for that, group interaction is so important and sharing your gifts, which you clearly have. But the other thing I really was interested in talking about was the fact that you have integrated sustainability really strongly in this product and everything that you do. So you're doing the whole
Yeah.
refillable shampoo bottle model. In fact, I saw online, like, you can order the packets, like the squeeze packets to refill the bottles. We've had some of our other businesses that have been on the podcast that are exactly like that. Because let me tell you, like single-use plastics, bane of my existence, I think, with everyone else at this point. But I still, need certain products in my life. So tell us what that has
Yeah.
looked like as far as what you have been able to do is finding the right packaging and then making sure that you're also educating your clients that they want to do the refillable model.
So it's not easy because people say they want to do the right thing when it comes to sustainability, and I'm sure you know this, but then the behavior doesn't follow.
Hmm.
But I believe that when you're a brand that, well, first of all, when you're small, you can launch and do it the way you think is the right way to do it. Much harder for big legacy brands to change because they've got supply chains and operations in place and lots of things, right? But when you're launching it from the start, you can set it up the way that you think it should be. And so we wanted to make sustainability and sort of community core to the business, not an afterthought. So we launched the MASAMI Institute, and we give a portion of our proceeds to help fund ocean research in Northeast Japan, where we get our ingredient. Because the idea is we're taking from the ocean, we should replenish. It's a very simple idea, right? Like you put back what you take. And so we do that. But then the sustainability journey is interesting because there's the formulas, which our formulas are super high quality, very dense, which is why you only need to use a very, this much of it, tiny amount. And you don't need to wash your hair as often. So that helps people get through the value equation because it's not a super inexpensive product. But when they realize, okay, that 10-ounce bottle is going to last them 2 or 3 months, it's like, okay, so there's the formulas and the sustainability of those. Obviously, no toxins, no sulfates, parabens, phthalates. There's the packaging. That's a big contributor to landfill, and beauty is a big offender. So we did the bottles that you're talking about, the large ceramic bottles, as a way to get people to start to get out of the plastic. The challenge is it's very difficult coming up with a product that will work in the shower that is not plastic. So the ceramic can break, but it's not like glass where it's going to break into little tiny shards and you're going to cut your foot because you don't see it. It's like a terracotta pot where it'll break into big chunks and you'll be upset, but you're not going to it's not going to be the end of the world. So it's not perfect, but it's a journey. And I always tell people this too. It's like, you got to start somewhere, you got to try some things. And we're continuing to look for other things. So I'm trying to find my next thing. Maybe you'll have an idea or somebody listening will. I'm trying to replace our travel size, 2-ounce travel size bottles that are plastic with like aluminum or a better material that can be reused because I never travel without my shampoo and conditioner. And, I mean, let's face it, most hotel shampoos and conditioners are really crappy and toxic. Very few hotels have actually good stuff. Sometimes they do, but mostly not. So that's my next sustainability challenge. But it's also just your entire operations. It's things like, how do you commute? What about your energy? Are you using clean energy? There's so many factors to sustainability to think about. But you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's overwhelming if you try and do everything at once, but the little steps. In fact, I was just talking to another guest where, we were talking about that. If you can change smaller behaviors in mass, it means something. If everybody then does this
Right.
behavior, it does become powerful. And I do like that we're now hearing more about things like whole stores that are simply refilleries, like you come in and refill your products and things like that. That was totally new to me before I started this podcast. I never even knew they existed. And now I'm like, yes, that makes so much sense. that's a great model. Or doing something where things are in solid instead of having to be put in a bottle, which is, a different product. But, let me ask you a little bit then, when you were going through your cancer treatment and everything, did it make you more aware about the toxicity of, ingredients in products, or did you already know that there was a lot of stuff that we were putting on our face and our skin and our hair that we shouldn't be?
I already knew, but you kind of do go down a little bit of a rabbit hole, starting to understand better just how some of these chemicals can affect the human body. And there's a lot of stuff, unfortunately, in beauty. 90% of hair care still has toxic ingredients. Most of skincare, most cosmetics still do. So, do you really want to be putting formaldehyde? That's in most mascaras. I think most people would go, that's probably not a good idea for a living person, you know? So it's you do start to understand that better for sure, but it's so confusing because as we know, the US doesn't have any kind of consistent regulatory process for this stuff. And so everyone's definitions are different. We use the EU just better. They have about 1,300 ingredients that are banned.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was like, well, they do tons of research. They put stuff on their watch list and then they decide, is it safe? Is it not safe? And so we're like, if we formulate to the EU, I trust that more than I trust, one person saying silicones are not good when the EU's like, actually, we don't have evidence saying that they're not good. We think they're good. So it's like, it's hard for consumers though, because who do you trust, right? But at least I tell people start with the bad things that you know are not good. Sulfates, parabens, phthalates, everyone pretty much agrees those are not good for you. So just look for stuff that doesn't have those. And that's a good start. And then you can move on to other things.
Yeah, and it's funny because in a world where we hear on the news where people are so skeptical about certain things in medicine, but they're not skeptical about these products for some reason, because I do believe people still look at ingredient list and products and say, well, if it's in there, it can't be harmful because they wouldn't be allowed to sell it to me, right? But again, something else that we have very similar. So in my background, many years ago, I had some friends that were diagnosed with breast cancer. We started doing fundraisers to help them, raise money to pay their bills. It ended up turning into a whole foundation and a national movement, an event we called Bowling for Boobies. And what I found was that these women, that were going through this cancer treatment suddenly became these, warriors of change because they're like, wow, all these chemicals is what's really, starting to believe is starting to trigger some of these cancer, situations, because cancer is triggered. It doesn't just come from nowhere. It's cells being triggered to do something. So many of these women started their own product and beauty lines, which first of all, I thought it was great that they were able to, become entrepreneurs. But, and let me tell you, that was almost 20 years ago, Lynn.
Wow.
And I still see the same ingredients in these products that these women had
Yeah.
alerted me to 20 years ago that were
Yeah.
so bad. And I still sit there and say, how can this still be? So, yes, I think we need to be a little bit more skeptical about our products, for as much as, we're skeptical about other things. It's like just because it's on a shelf and the bottle's pretty doesn't mean you should be using that. So, get a little bit more educated about what sulfates and parabens do and all these toxic ingredients, because I too believe that they trigger certain inflammations in us that, are making us sicker than we should be.
I 100% agree with that. And I just think it's the cumulative effect of using this stuff and using so much of it. Because now I think the average, I think it's about 14 products a day, beauty products a day, or maybe I'm way underestimating that. I have to look that up again. How many products an average woman uses in a day, beauty products? And it's a lot. And
Mhm.
so, and because also now you're not just using, when we were growing up, your beauty routine was really basic. Shampoo, conditioner, maybe there was a styling gel or hairspray, which is also bad, but deodorant and maybe a perfume and maybe you'd use a moisturizer. Now it's like, oh no, you need the eye cream, you need the dark spot corrector, you need the toner, you need you know what I mean? Like there's so many products that we use. It's crazy. So you are 100% right. And I do think in my case for my cancer, I had a full genetic workup and they did not, I had nothing genetically that would predispose me to cancer. And I was not hormone positive either. So it is environmental. Something triggered it, but it could have been something. I mean, look, it could have been from when I was a kid and we were eating TV dinners, every other night from plastic trays that were put in the microwave, who knows? It could be this culmination of, but the point is like, at least if you can control what you can control, what you're putting in and on your body, that should at least be enough, get you halfway there. And then there's the stuff you can't control, and we don't know it's bad until later we find out what there's microplastics. Oh my God, nobody told us. But
I know. Now we're all about the microplastics on the news. That's all you hear about. It's like that's been around for a while. Glad you woke up. But I do love that you have so much of the educational aspect, in your product, on your website, and also in your social media. Your social media has just been great. And I love that you're working with these ambassadors that are helping you to forward the message of, positivity and what it means to make a lifestyle change like that. So let's talk a little bit about what the marketing's been like for this product and the business. And what do you see moving forward? You are looking to do to make sure that more people are aware of this brand.
yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of word of mouth. We're lucky that when people try our products, we have 3 times industry average in terms of loyalty for hair care. So we have some customers that are diehard, ride or die type customers, thank God. Um, but it really is just continuing to educate, which is really important, and continuing to kind of get new people in the fold, one person at a time. So I do a lot of podcasts because it's great to be able to tell a bigger story and tell more of the education because people don't realize some of the stuff we're talking about in terms of what's in their products. And then when they kind of go home and they look and they're like, oh my God, I didn't know that I was using, whatever it is that actually is not good. And even like men, right? Let's face it, like most guys are pretty lazy when it comes to their personal care products. And like my husband's giving me a side eye, but like for him, it was like, I don't know what this stuff is. Sulfate. What are you talking about? Sulfates, I have no idea. But when I showed him a story about how phthalates can, because they disrupt your endocrine system, they can actually shrink a guy's junk. Yes, that
Wow,
was
I
when
didn't know
he was
that.
like, wait a minute here. This is not good. So that I think, the right data points will hopefully get people more tuned in. But you do have, I mean, this stuff is just not good. I mean, a lot of people tell me like they'll have like bumps on their scalps, usually from the sulfates, which is
Yeah.
detergent. You're literally putting like Tide detergent on your head, scrubbing it in, and then your scalp is breaking out.
Well, you had mentioned that you had actually lost your hair when you went through chemo. Did you see an improvement in your hair and texture as your hair started coming back and you were starting to use these products exclusively?
Well, I'd been using them for about a year before I lost, and so my hair was really in good shape and my scalp was in really good shape. And then when my hair started growing back, yeah. But a lot of chemo patients will say that their hair grows back differently. And mine did as well. It's curlier than it was. Like it never had a wave, and now it's got a little bit of a wave. I like to keep it short because otherwise now with this sort of it gets a little out of control. Um, but I definitely have noticed that my hair doesn't fall out like it used to. And I've heard a lot of people that use our products say that they've noticed that as well. So it kind of reduces hair fall because I
Mm.
think it just helps your scalp be healthier.
Mm-hmm.
So when your scalp is healthy and your hair follicles are hydrated and your hair is hydrated, you know what I mean? You don't have breakage, you don't have as much frizz, you don't have as much damage, and then you don't lose your hair as much. So it's really great also for a lot of our customers are older and they've got thinning hair and they're looking, to preserve what they have. It won't make your hair grow back, but at least it will hopefully keep the hair you have super healthy and you won't lose it.
Yeah, and I can tell that you're really into the scalp being healthy too, because I did see you had a product on your website, which was the Wabi
Oh,
Sabi scalp
yep,
scrubber. And I
yes.
love that because I am so into scalp massages. And I was like, that looks divine. So I think that that in combination with the product would be a luxury experience.
Yeah, that's another one where it's an easy way to get guys into the brand that way because a lot of men love that scrubber, especially, I mean women too, but for whatever reason, it's just that tool. You've got a tool and you're using the tool and
Well,
it's
and they feel like the more vigorous they could be, the more that they're working. So,
yes.
must work then. Okay, but let's talk a little bit more about the education real quickly. So, I know that you had mentioned before about really educating salons and stylists and partnering with them so that they understood the product and why it was important and how it actually does work, even being a clean product. So, what does that look like? Are you actively looking for salon partnerships to build the brand, inflection or
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone has ideas or salons, let me know. But yeah, we have some that have been with us for the last couple of years. Salons especially like using our products because it works for almost every hair type and texture. So it eliminates a lot of the SKUs that they tend to carry because a lot of salons, if you go in, you'll see in their back bar, they'll have
Mhm.
50 products.
Yeah.
And for a small salon, it's takes up space, it's money, and it's just complexity that they don't really want. So a lot of stylists have told me that they can eliminate 90% of their products when they bring in Masami because we solve pretty much, most people's issues. And then they have some specialty products for the ones that, they really need to have something special. And so that's nice to hear too. But yeah, we have some salon distribution. We're in some boutiques. But yeah, I'm always looking to expand that footprint and continue with our DTC business as well. And we're on Amazon.
And of course, there's the website. So we've talked so much about this product, and I know I've been gushing over it because it looks super cool. And, I'm so interested to try it myself. So tell our listening audience where they can find you online because I know that they want to go check out the products and see that scalp scrubber as well.
Yes. So you can find us at lovemasami.com, LOVEMASAMI.com. You know what? Why don't we make a code for your listeners? Wild Party 20% off. I will set that up.
That
Okay.
would be amazing. So the code will be the Wild Party, and we will
Yep.
get 20% off. I love that. Lynn, thank you so
Of
much.
course. So
That
yes.
is wonderful. I never ask for codes, but when people offer them, I'm like, that's great because listen, I'm a girl who loves a sale. I'm telling you right now. So yeah, discounts are everything to me. But you know what? It has been so much fun talking to you. And I know we could go on hours and hours. Like I said, I already knew, that we had so much in common, but I'm really excited what you've built and I can't wait to see where you guys go with it. So thank you for sharing your story
Thank
on
you
the
so much.
podcast.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you for the conversation.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.